Goaltenders. They're a different breed. The last line of defense, the masked warriors between the pipes. Some say they're the most important players on the ice, and considering the pressure they face every night, that might just be true. On average, an NHL goaltender will face around 30 shots per game, and that's pretty much been the standard since we've been keeping track. Every 2 minutes or so, they're forced to make a save or watch the puck go by them. But sometimes we see nights when a goalie has to do far more than that. Nights where the workload is relentless, the odds are stacked against them, and somehow they rise to the occasion. We've seen some insane performances in recent years. In 2023, Juuse Saros stopped 64 shots in a single game. Back in 2014, Ben Scrivens put up a record-setting 59-save shutout, stunning the hockey world. But none of those performances compare to what happened on March 21st, 1991. On that night, one goaltender faced 73 shots, the most ever recorded in a regular season game. And he didn't just survive, he thrived, setting a modern-day NHL record for the most saves in a single outing. And no, it wasn't Patrick Waugh, it wasn't Eddie Belfour, it wasn't Billy Ramford. He wasn't one of the first names that come to mind when you think of the best goaltenders during this time. The unlikely hero of this story was Ron Tugnutt. Or as he was dubbed that fateful night, Ronnie Lugnut, because he was the only thing keeping the wheels from completely falling off of the Quebec Nordiques. So how did we get here, and what happened after that historic night? Let's dive in. Ron Tugnutt was born on October 22nd, 1967 in Scarborough, Ontario. He played 3 seasons with the OHL's Peterborough Petes before being drafted into the NHL. During his junior career, he racked up accolades, winning the FW Dinty Moore Trophy for Best Rookie Goals Against Average and the Dave Pinckey Trophy for Top Team Goaltending. By 1987, he was an OHL All-Star and seemed destined for a solid pro career. He was drafted by the Quebec Nordiques in the 4th round, 87th overall, and spent his early years bouncing between the AHL and NHL. Quebec around this time was one of the worst teams in hockey, and that's putting it lightly. They were historically bad. From 1988 to 1990, Tugnutt appeared in 67 games for the Nordiques, posting a record of 17-37-6. But considering the team's struggles, those numbers weren't entirely on him. Tugnutt's role was that of a backup goaltender for most of his early years. His playing style was a mix of stand-up and butterfly goaltending. Early in his career, he had a tendency to move around the crease excessively and struggled to aggressively challenge shooters. However, under the guidance of goaltending coach Philip Meyer in his later years, he refined his technique, becoming a more positional goaltender, staying upright in his crease, and consistently prepared to make the save. And in 1991, he got his opportunity. He played a career-high 56 games, and despite Quebec still being terrible, began establishing himself as a full-time NHL goalie. As the season neared its end, and the Nordiques remained stuck at the bottom of the standings, something incredible happened on March 21st, 1991. Quebec was set to face off against the Boston Bruins, one of the league's top teams and first place in the Old Wales Conference. Expectations, well, let's just say they weren't high. One might expect the Nordiques to get steamrolled, but nobody saw what was coming next. From the moment the puck dropped, Boston came out flying. They peppered Tugnutt with shots from every angle, throwing everything but the kitchen sink at the net. But somehow, he was stopping everything. By the end of the first period, the Bruins had outshot Quebec 17-7, but trailed by 1 after Randy Veselchek put the Nordiques ahead. Then just 15 seconds into the second period, Boston finally broke through with Ken Hodges' 27th goal of the season. But instead of crumbling, Quebec answered right back with a goal from Marc Vermette. For the rest of that period, it was the Ron Tugnutt show. Shot after shot, save after save. Ronnie stopped another 18 shots that period alone, bumping his total to 35 before the third period even started. Then, for the next 20 minutes, he transformed into prime Patrick Roy. Despite allowing 2 goals to Nevin Marquardt and the legendary Ray Bourque, Quebec found a way to tie the game at 3-3, with a goal from Alex Juuse Saros. But here's where things got crazy. By the end of regulation, Boston had outshot Quebec 53-20. In the third period alone, Boston had 25 shots to the Nordiques' 5. It was ice tilt at its finest, and just when you thought he couldn't do more, Tugnut stepped up again in overtime.
Janney, back to front, poked, loose, hot, what a save by Tugnut! The best save of all!
Shot after shot, 12 in total, denied. Ray Bourque, who set an NHL record that night with 19 shots on goal, had the best chance to win it in OT, but Ronnie Lugnut wasn't letting that happen. The game ended in a 3-3 tie when the final horn sounded. Tugnut had made 70 saves on 73 shots. It was one of the greatest goaltending performances the NHL and hockey as a whole had ever seen. The showing was so unreal that Cam Neely made Tugnut take a bow at the old Boston Garden, and the Bruins fans gave him a standing ovation. Pure class. In just 65 minutes of play, Ron Tugnut turned aside an incredible 70 of 73 shots faced. That means he was facing more than a shot per minute for the entire game. That's just nuts. Setting a modern-day NHL record for the most saves in a single regular season game. He surpassed Mario Lessard's 65-save performance against the Minnesota North Stars on March 24th, 1981, almost exactly a decade earlier. But there's kind of a twist. Tugnut's record technically ranks second all-time. In the original 6 era, Chicago's Sammy Lepresti made an absurd 80 saves on 83 shots, once again against Boston, on March 4th, 1941. Considering just how bad the Quebec Nordiques were at the time, this might be the most unexpected goaltending performance in hockey history. It would have been real easy for Tugnut to chalk this up as just another rough night behind a struggling team, but instead he was locked in, determined to steal the show against the conference-leading Bruins, and that's exactly what he did. So what happened next? Well, despite that legendary night, Tugnut's career never really skyrocketed. He finished the season with a 12-29-10 record, a 4.05 goals against average, and an .885 save percentage. In the middle of an inconsistent 1992, he was sent to the American Hockey League and then traded to the Edmonton Oilers as a backup. Just 1 year after setting a modern-day NHL record, Ron Tugnut's NHL journey was anything but stable. His time with the Oilers was short-lived, as he was selected by the Mighty Ducks of Anaheim in the 1993 expansion draft. For a moment, it looked like Tugnut might finally get his break. Meanwhile, in Montreal, the Canadiens were struggling to find a reliable backup for Patrick Roy, so in a flash, Tugnut was shipped off to the Canadiens in exchange for Stéphane Lebeau. It was a tough break. With Anaheim, he had posted a respectable .908 save percentage over 28 games. In Montreal, his numbers plummeted, with just an .860 save percentage in 8 appearances. Just like that, any momentum he had built seemed to slip away. It was a harsh reminder of just how fast things could change in the NHL. And upon his arrival in Montreal, Patrick Roy made it very clear that Tugnut was nothing more than the guy who played when he didn't feel like it.
The first time I met him, I'd met him, but not as a partner. And the first time I did meet him, he said, "We're going to be a great partnership as long as I understand that I only play the games he's going to let me play, and I never play any big games, ever."
So of course, during the 1994 Stanley Cup playoffs, when Patrick Roy was sidelined with an injury, he gave Tugnut a rare opportunity to start against the Boston Bruins. It didn't go well. He allowed several early goals in a 6-3 loss, and that was the last time he saw the ice that postseason. The following year, a lockout-shortened season saw him play sparingly, and by 1995, the Canadiens replaced him with Patrick Lebrec. Frustrated and questioning his future, Tugnut was at a crossroads. But his story wasn't over. That summer, he signed a 1-year deal with the Washington Capitals and spent the entire season with their AHL affiliate, the Portland Pirates. There, he rediscovered his game, helping lead the Pirates to the Calder Cup Finals. It was this performance that caught the attention of the Ottawa Senators, who brought him in on a new deal. Under the guidance of goaltending coach Phil Meyer, Tugnutt redefined his fundamentals, regained his confidence, and gradually climbed the ranks. He went from battling Mike Bales for the backup spot behind Damian Rhodes to splitting duties with Rhodes for the next 2 seasons. And by 1999, he had taken over as Ottawa's undisputed starter. And that 1999 season was by far the best of his career. He led the entire NHL in goals against average with a 1.79 goals against and finished second in the NHL with a .925 save percentage, a Senators franchise record at the time, and set a career high in wins while matching his personal best in shutouts. His play, combined with an injury to Curtis Joseph, would earn him a spot in the 1999 NHL All-Star Game. But hockey is a business at the end of the day, and Ottawa had different plans. The following season, after moving on from Rhodes, they handed Tugnutt the full-time starting role. However, he couldn't quite replicate his previous year's dominance, and at the trade deadline, Ottawa made a bold move, trading him to the Pittsburgh Penguins in exchange for the battle-tested playoff veteran Tom Barrasso. Tugnutt wasted no time making an impact in Pittsburgh. He took over as the starter and even helped the Penguins win a round. That postseason, he found himself in another marathon game reminiscent of his legendary 70-save performance from nearly a decade prior. On May 4th, 2000, against the Philadelphia Flyers, Tugnutt once again made 70 saves on 72 shots this time in that legendary Game 4 that stretched into 5 overtimes. But much like before, Tugnutt couldn't get a win. Keith Primo ended it with the 72nd shot, giving the Flyers a 2-1 win in what would become the longest NHL game since the 30s. Despite the crushing defeat, Tugnutt's stock had never been higher. That offseason, he became one of the most sought-after free agents in the league. Both Ottawa and Pittsburgh tried to bring him back, but neither could match the lucrative contract offered by the expansion Columbus Blue Jackets. In Columbus, Tugnutt became the backbone of the franchise in its inaugural season. His 22 wins at the time set an NHL record for the most victories by a goaltender on an expansion team. His .924 save percentage was among the league's best. However, year 2 was a different story. Injuries took a toll, and with the emergence of Mark Dennis, Columbus decided it was time to pass the torch, trading Tugnutt to the Dallas Stars. In Dallas, he was brought in as a veteran backup to Marty Turco. When Turco went down with an ankle injury in January 2003, Tugnutt stepped up, starting nearly 20 consecutive games and posting back-to-back shutouts in the process. He finished the year with a solid 15-10-5 record and 4 shutouts. But as Tugnutt started to age, the following 2004 season was by far the toughest of his career. Opportunities were scarce. By January, he had only started 3 games. In search of playing time, the Stars would send him to the AHL's Utah Grizzlies, marking the first time in almost a decade that he had been demoted. Sadly, just 5 games into his stint, he suffered a groin injury that sidelined him until after the All-Star break. Eventually, he was recalled to Dallas and put together 2 strong starts, including a shutout, and that would be the last shutout of Ronnie's career. After his stint in Dallas, he wrapped up his NHL career in 2005, just before the NHL lockout. Ron Tugnutt may not have had the most glamorous career, finishing with a record of 186, 239, and 62. But considering the teams he played for early on, as we know, that record alone doesn't tell the whole story. He holds the modern NHL record for most saves in a single game, played in multiple eras of goaltending, made the adjustments he needed to carve out a 16-year career in the NHL, and had some unforgettable moments in Quebec and Ottawa along the way. After retiring, Tugnutt stayed in hockey, coaching, and even working as a color commentator for Hockey Night in Canada. And while he may not be a Hall of Famer, Ronnie Tugnutt will always be remembered for one legendary night in 1991, when he stood alone as an unstoppable force and refused to break. And that's the magic of hockey, isn't it, boys? The sheer unpredictability of the game is what makes this sport truly special. And that's Ronnie Tugnutt for you boys. That's gonna wrap up this video. As always, a huge thank you for liking and subscribing, it truly means a lot. If you've got a player or a moment in hockey you'd love to see covered next, drop a suggestion in the comments. I always appreciate the ideas, and I'll see you boys in the next one.